She was his obsession until one night, she made him hers. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation drifted through the elegant restaurant in downtown Manhattan. Silverware clinked gently against porcelain plates, and warm golden light poured from chandeliers that looked like frozen stars. Each dish that passed by seemed like a work of art, designed for people who never worried about the price of anything. Emma Brooks paused at the entrance, clutching her small purse with both hands. Her reflection in the glass door stared back at her plain dress from a thrift store, shoes she had resold twice, lipstick fading after a long shift at the diner. She whispered to herself, "You promised Jenny you would go. Just breathe." A waiter smiled politely. "Table 7, ma'am?" Emma nodded quickly, scanning the rows of tables. "Table 7, table 7, she muttered like a charm against her nerves. Her eyes landed on a man sitting alone near the back. He wore a dark suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack. His attention was buried in his phone, the blue glow brushing the sharp line of his jaw. "That must be him," she breathed and straightened her shoulders. Her heart thumped louder than the piano music drifting through the room. She crossed the floor, her heels tapping softly on marble. "Hi," she said, forcing a bright smile as she reached his table. "You must be Kevin. I am Emma. It is really nice to finally meet you." "Cup?" The man looked up, startled. For a split second his expression froze, then softened. "Oh, hello, Emma." Relieved, she slid into the seat across from him before her courage failed. "Blind dates are always awkward, right? Jenny told me you are a bit quiet, so do not worry. I can talk enough for both of us." He blinked once, then smiled faintly, setting his phone aside. "Right. Blind dates. They are something else." Emma laughed, a nervous, breathy sound. "Exactly. I have been working so much lately I almost canceled, but Jenny insisted I take one night off." "Work keeps you busy?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. "I am a waitress," she said, fiddling with the edge of her napkin. "Not glamorous, but it pays most of the bills. What about you?" He hesitated, then said, "I work in tech." "Tech? Like coding and apps? That sounds complicated." "I am terrible with computers," she admitted, smiling shyly. He chuckled. "Something like that." Quote. The tension between them eased. The conversation flowed more easily than either expected. Her small stories about late customers and spilled coffee, his quiet humor that slipped through like sunlight after clouds. From across the restaurant, waiters glided between tables carrying plates of steak and wine glasses sparkling like jewels. But at table 7, a small pocket of warmth bloomed between two strangers, one pretending to be on the right date, and one deciding, for reasons he did not fully understand, to let the mistake play out just a little longer. Neither of them knew that this simple mix-up would change both their lives forever. The night after the awkward dinner, New York felt colder than usual. Streetlights cast long, yellow reflections across wet asphalt as Emma hurried home, clutching her coat tighter. The sound of passing cars echoed between buildings, but her thoughts were louder. Every few seconds her mind replayed that dinner at table 7, the laughter, the warmth, and then the sharp sting of realizing she had been talking to the wrong man the entire time. In her small apartment the heat barely worked. Her roommate, Jenny, sat cross-legged on the couch with a cup of tea and a knowing smile. "So, how was Kevin?" Emma groaned, dropping her purse on the floor. "He was not Kevin, Jenny. I sat at the wrong table." Jenny almost choked on her tea. "You did not." "I did," Emma said, face buried in her hands. "And the worst part? He was nice. Charming, even. We actually talked for an hour before I realized my real date was texting me from the other side of the restaurant." Jenny laughed, shaking her head. "Only you, Emma. You turn a blind date into a mistaken identity comedy." "It was not funny," Emma muttered, though a small smile betrayed her. "He looked like someone from another world. Expensive everything. And yet, he listened to me like what I said mattered." She leaned back on the couch, eyes distant. "I wish I could forget how that felt." Across the city, high above the skyline, Liam Parker stood before a wall of glass in his penthouse office. The city shimmered below him like a living map, Yet his reflection in the window looked tired, tie loosened, phone silent. For years he had built his empire on precision and control. Tonight he kept thinking about a woman who had accidentally walked into his life and treated him like a stranger who mattered, not a billionaire to be admired. Claire, his assistant, stepped in quietly. "You are still here, Mr. Parker. Everything all right?" He turned slightly, the faintest smile on his face. "Have you ever had someone mistake you for somebody else?" She blinked, surprised. "Not recently. Someone did tonight," he said, voice softer now. "And for the first time in a long while, I did not correct them." Claire tilted her head, studying him. "Did it feel good?" He looked out the window again. It felt honest. The next morning, sunlight spilled through thin curtains into Emma's apartment. Her alarm buzzed at 6, another day at the diner. She moved through her small routine coffee, toast, pulling her hair into a ponytail, trying not to think about last night. But the memory clung to her like perfume, his calm voice, that patient smile when she nervously talked too much. At the diner, the morning rush hit early. The bell above the door jingled nonstop. Regulars filled the booths, and Emma balanced trays like a juggler in a circus. She had just set down a plate of pancakes when the door opened again, letting in a cold breeze and him. Liam Parker stood at the entrance, no suit jacket this time, only a gray sweater and a simple coat. He looked completely out of place among the smell of bacon and the crackle of the coffee machine, but his eyes searched until they landed on her. Emma froze, the tray still in her hand. "Oh no," she whispered under her breath. He smiled slightly and took a seat at the counter. When she approached, trying to stay professional, he said calmly, "Table 7, right?" Her cheeks flushed. "You remembered." "I do not usually forget conversations that feel real," he replied. "I owe you an apology. I should have said something when you mistook me for someone else." Emma's lips curved into a reluctant smile. "Maybe it is for the best. It was the nicest wrong table I have ever sat at." He laughed softly, and for a moment, the noise of the diner faded into the background. Two worlds hers of small tips and early mornings, his of skyscrapers and meetings met again, this time by choice. When she poured him coffee, her hands trembled just slightly. "So," she asked, "tech guy, right? What brings you to my side of town?" Liam looked around the humble diner, then back at her. "Maybe I just wanted a better breakfast conversation." Outside, traffic roared. Inside, something quieter began to stir, an invisible thread pulling them back toward the same mistake that might not have been a mistake at all. The next few weeks passed like pages in a story Emma could not stop reading. After that second meeting at the diner, Liam began showing up once or twice a week. At first, he said it was for the pancakes, but even Jenny teased her, saying, "No one drives across Manhattan for pancakes that average." Emma would laugh it off, insisting he was just being polite. Yet every time he came through that glass door, her heart found its rhythm again. Their conversations stretched longer each visit, sometimes about books, sometimes about life in the city, sometimes about nothing at all. Emma would complain about double shifts and cranky customers, and Liam would listen, his hand wrapped around a coffee cup like he was holding on to the sound of her voice. He never talked about himself, and she never pushed. She liked not knowing. It made him feel reachable. But when Emma's landlord posted a red eviction notice on her door, reality hit hard. Rent had gone up again, and tips had not. She worked extra hours, skipping meals to save money. Her hands ached from carrying heavy trays, her eyes burned from lack of sleep. Yet she never told Liam. She did not want pity, especially not from a man who probably never had to check a price tag in his life. One evening, as rain soaked the sidewalks and lightning flickered between the towers, Emma trudged home through puddles, her uniform clinging to her legs. When she reached her building, she stopped short. The hallway light flickered, and the door to her apartment stood slightly open. Heart pounding, she pushed it wider. Jenny was packing boxes. "They sold the building," Jenny said, her eyes wet. "We have to be out by the end of the month." Emma sank onto the couch. "We just got settled." "I know. I already found a place with my cousin in Queens, but the rent is too high for both of us." Jenny hesitated. "I am sorry, Em." That night, Emma sat by the window, sketchbook in her lap. She drew without thinking faces, city lights, the curve of a man's smile at a diner counter. When her pencil broke, she whispered, "Get it together, Emma." She refused to be the girl who needed saving. The next morning, Liam noticed she looked pale. "Are you all right?" he asked as she poured his coffee. "Just tired," she said. "Long shift?" "Something like that." She forced a smile and turned away. Later that day, she found an envelope tucked under the napkin holder at the counter where he always Saturday inside was a card written in neat, careful handwriting. Art deserves a home. So do you, L. Along with the note was a business card for a local gallery looking for part-time assistants. Emma felt her throat tighten. He did not, she muttered, half angry, half moved. She folded the card and slipped it into her apron pocket, pretending it did not mean anything. But that night she went to the address printed on it. The gallery owner, a kind older woman named Martha, welcomed her in. Within minutes, Emma found herself surrounded by canvases, color, and warmth. "We could use someone who loves art," Martha said. "Can you start Monday?" Emma blinked, speechless. "Yes," she managed. That weekend, she told Liam about it over coffee. "So, this gallery job just appeared out of nowhere?" he asked, feigning surprise. "Yeah. Funny coincidence, right?" she said, narrowing her eyes. "Very funny," he replied, smiling behind his cup. She laughed, shaking her head. "You are impossible." "I prefer resourceful," he said. For a moment neither spoke. The silence between them was full but comfortable. He finally asked, "Do you still draw?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Every night. It keeps me sane." "You should not hide that kind of light," he said quietly. "The world has enough darkness already." "Yeah?" His words sank deep, and for the first time she wondered who he really was. The way he spoke, the weight in his tone, it was not how a simple tech guy talked. Days turned into weeks. Emma's sketches began filling the gallery's back room. She was still broke, still juggling shifts at the diner. But for the first time in years, she felt alive. When Liam dropped by the gallery unannounced, she almost dropped her sketchbook. He looked around, impressed. "You did these?" "Some of them," she said softly. "They are beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. That night, as Emma walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, she realized something had shifted. The man she had met by accident was no longer just a stranger at a wrong table. He was part of her story now, tangled into her daily routine like morning coffee and the hum of the subway. But in another part of the city, behind mirrored glass and boardroom walls, people were whispering the name Liam Parker again. His company was planning a charity gala, one that would soon pull both of their worlds together. Emma did not know it yet, but the next chapter of her life, the one she had been sketching without realizing, was about to be hung in the brightest room she had ever stepped into. A week later, the city was draped in silver lights. Banners fluttered across Park Avenue, announcing the Cole Foundation Charity Gala, an event whispered about in every magazine and news feed. For most New Yorkers, it was just another night of champagne and speeches. For Emma Brooks, it was a night that did not belong to her world at all. She stood at the edge of the marble staircase outside the gallery, clutching an invitation that was not even hers. Martha, the gallery owner, had received it as a small thank you for her community art program, but she had sprained her ankle that morning. "Go for me," Martha insisted. "You deserve one night to see how far your work has come. Besides, one of your sketches is displayed there tonight." Emma could hardly breathe. "Displayed where?" "In the student artist section," Martha said with a wink. "Anonymous entries. You might even spot it." "You won." So now she was here, wrapped in a borrowed black dress, hair twisted up in a bun she had practiced 3 times. She had promised herself she would only look at the art, grab a bite, and leave quietly before anyone noticed her. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers glowed like constellations. Waiters floated by with trays of sparkling drinks. A jazz band played softly in the corner. It was a world of silk, diamonds, and the gentle hum of wealth. Emma walked slowly along the gallery wing, eyes wide. Her sketch City Hands was there, framed under soft light. Her breath caught. That piece had been drawn on a night she could not sleep, hands ink-stained, mind full of memories she had tried to bury. Seeing it here felt like seeing a secret written on a wall. "Beautiful piece," a familiar voice said behind her. She turned and nearly dropped her clutch. Liam Parker stood there, perfectly tailored suit, eyes bright with surprise and something deeper. "You," she whispered. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, slightly amused. "I could ask you the same. I thought you hated these kinds of events." "I do," she said quickly. "I am only here by accident." "Another accident," he said softly. "Seems to be our thing." She tried to laugh, but her chest felt tight. "Do not tell me you are secretly a painter too." Quote, "Not quite," he said, eyes flicking toward the crowd gathering near the stage. "But I do appreciate art. especially when it comes from honesty. Before Emma could respond, a man in a tuxedo approached and whispered something to him. Liam nodded, then turned back to her. "Excuse me for a moment?" She nodded, watching as he walked toward the stage. But then the announcer's voice echoed through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host tonight, Mr. Liam Parker, CEO of Parker Innovations and chair of the Cole Foundation." The room erupted in polite applause. Emma's world tilted. The man she thought worked in tech was not just a tech guy. He owned the room literally. Her mind spun through every conversation, every coffee shared at the diner, every simple word he had said. All this time, he had known she had no idea who he was, and he had let her talk about paying rent, about second-hand dresses, about her mother's struggle to afford hospital care while he lived in penthouses and donated wings of hospitals. As he spoke on stage, his tone was warm and measured, thanking the foundation partners and introducing new scholarship programs. Cameras flashed, people nodded with admiration, and Emma felt the ground shift beneath her heels. She slipped out of the main hall and into the corridor, her chest tight. How could she have been so blind? When he finally found her near the terrace, her arms were crossed against the cold night air. "Emma," he said carefully, "please let me explain." "You do not have to," she said, eyes glistening. "I get it. You wanted to know what it was like to be normal for a while. Congratulations. Now you can write about it in your next interview." He winced. "It was never a game. I just wanted to be seen for who I am, not what I have." Quote, "Then you should have told me who you were," she said sharply. "Honesty is not something you buy with coffee and smiles, Liam." He stepped closer. "You are right. I should have told you. But that night at the restaurant, when you sat down, it was the first time in years someone looked at me and did not see a headline. You talked about dreams, about courage. You made me feel human again." "Human?" she said bitterly. "You make billions. I make tips." Quote, "That is exactly why I did not tell you," he said quietly. "Because I knew the moment you found out, you would stop seeing me as just a man." Tears stung her eyes. "You are right about that, because now I do not even know if the man I liked was real." For a long moment, neither spoke. The city lights blinked far below them. Then Emma straightened her shoulders. "Thank you for the gallery opportunity," she said softly. "It means a lot. But this, whatever it was, ends tonight." Quote, she walked past him, heels clicking against marble, leaving him standing alone under the golden glow of the chandeliers. Inside, the gala continued laughter, applause, the endless rhythm of privilege. But on the terrace, the echo of her footsteps lingered longer than the music. That night, as Emma rode the subway home, the city outside the windows blurred into streaks of light. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "For what it is worth, you changed something in me. L. Come!" She stared at the screen for a long time, then locked it without replying. In the distance, the skyscrapers loomed like silent watchers. Somewhere inside one of them, a billionaire stood alone, realizing that the only woman who had ever treated him like an ordinary man had just walked away. Rain hammered the windows that night, washing the glow of the city into a blur of gold and gray. Emma sat alone in her small apartment, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside her. Her sketchbook lay open on the table, but the pencil in her hand would not move. Every line she tried to draw came out wrong, too shaky, too heavy, too full of thoughts she did not want to feel. She replayed everything in her head, the gala, the reveal, the look on Liam's face when she walked away. Anger burned under her ribs, but behind it was something worse: disappointment. She had believed in him, or at least in the version of him who drank diner coffee and listened like her stories mattered. Now all of that felt like an illusion wrapped in designer suits and careful lies. Across town, Liam Parker sat in his office long after everyone had gone home. The city stretched beneath him, sharp and cold. He had always believed he could fix anything with precision and logic: numbers, contracts, outcomes. But he could not fix this. He kept seeing Emma's face, the tremor in her voice when she said, "I do not even know if the man I liked was real." The truth was, he did not know either. He opened his laptop, staring at an unfinished email addressed to her. He typed, deleted, and started again. "Emma, I never meant to deceive you. I just wanted to hold on to something real. I understand if you never want to see me again, but please know that every word, every laugh was true." Quote, he hovered over the send button for a long time before closing the lid. Words were not enough this time. 2 weeks passed. Winter crept in early, coating the sidewalks with frost. Emma threw herself into work at the gallery, avoiding the diner, avoiding anything that reminded her of Table 7. But every time she passed the corner where he used to park, her chest tightened. One late afternoon, Martha approached her with gentle eyes. "Emma, you have a visitor." Emma turned and froze. Liam stood by the doorway, not in a suit this time, but in a simple coat, his hands in his pockets. He looked different, quieter, maybe even humble. "I just came to return something," he said softly. He handed her a small black notebook, her sketchbook. "You left it at the gala," he added. "I found it after you left." She hesitated, then took it from him. "Thank you." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt fragile, like glass about to crack. Finally, he said, "I know sorry does not fix anything, but I am sorry, Emma. Not for being who I am, but for not trusting you with the truth." She exhaled slowly. "I did not need you to be poor, Liam. I just needed you to be honest." He nodded, eyes down. "I understand that now." Before she could answer, Martha called from across the room. "Emma, the delivery truck is here. We need those canvases checked." Emma turned back to him. "I have to work." "I know," he said, stepping back. "But would you let me help with something that is not about money? The gallery's fundraiser next month, maybe? I could volunteer. No speeches, no headlines." Her brows rose, half in surprise, half in disbelief. "You? Volunteer?" He smiled faintly. "I am learning." After a pause, she said quietly, "We will see." Then she walked away, leaving him standing among the paintings. That evening, when the gallery closed, Emma found an envelope tucked under her sketchbook. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. "Art heals because it shows the truth. You showed me mine. L." She stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it carefully into the back of her sketchbook, saying nothing to anyone. Days turned into weeks again. Emma's gallery project gained attention, and one morning Martha rushed in holding a newspaper. "Look," she said, pointing to the front page. "Parker Innovations launches new charity fund for independent artists." Emma froze. Beneath the headline was a photo of Liam shaking hands with community leaders. No red carpet, no gala, no press conference. Just a quiet effort to fund artists and local spaces like theirs. That evening when she left work, she found him outside, waiting near the street corner. The air was cold enough to sting, but his breath came out calm. "I did not do it to win you back," he said. "I did it because you were right. I needed to learn what giving really means." Quote. Emma crossed her arms, fighting a smile. "You are getting better at apologies." He laughed softly. "Practice." A pause stretched between them, gentle but uncertain. Then he said, "Would you walk with me?" They strolled down the block, their steps echoing in rhythm with the city around them. He told her about the changes at his company, about setting up scholarships, about trying to be present instead of powerful. She told him about her art students, about teaching them to draw hope instead of perfection. At one point, he looked at her and said, "You know, when we met, you thought I was someone else. Maybe that was fate's way of forcing me to meet the version of myself I had forgotten." She looked up at him, eyes soft. "Maybe. Or maybe it was just a mistake worth making." He smiled. "A mistake worth keeping." As they reached the crosswalk, snow began to fall slow, quiet, forgiving. For a long time, they stood there, watching it swirl under the streetlights. It was not a grand ending, no kiss under fireworks, no promises of forever. Just two people walking side by side through the winter night, both a little less broken than before. And for once, that was enough. Winter melted slowly into early spring. The snow on the sidewalks turned to slush, and the city traded its gray coats for flashes of color again. For Emma, life began to find rhythm once more. The gallery's fundraiser had been a success, drawing donations from companies and private patrons, including, quietly, Parker Innovations. She never said thank you directly, and he never asked for it. That unspoken distance felt safer for both of them. But one rainy Tuesday, as Emma was closing the gallery, she found Liam standing outside again, an umbrella in hand, and a look that was not his usual calm. "Can I walk you home?" he asked. She hesitated, studying his face. "It is pouring." "Hey." "That is the point," he said with a faint smile. "Rain makes the city honest." So they walked. The streets glistened under streetlights, reflections of neon blending into puddles. They talked about small things at first, the weather, a new art exhibit, the way the gallery cat had started sleeping on Emma's desk. But underneath it, Both felt a current pulling them toward a deeper truth neither wanted to face. When they reached her building, Emma stopped by the door. "You did not come here just to talk about rain." He looked at her, quiet for a long moment. "You are right. I came to tell you I am leaving for Singapore next week. The board is expanding a new branch, and they need me there for a while." Her throat tightened. "For how long? Maybe a few months. Maybe longer." She nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "That is great for you." "I am not sure it is," he said softly. "The last time I built something, it cost me every real thing I had. I do not want to repeat that." Emma held his gaze. "Then do not." "It is not that simple," he said. "But I wanted to see you before I go. Not because I expect anything, just because I needed to say this in person. You changed the way I see everything. You taught me that connection is not weakness." The words hung between them, heavy and honest. Rain pattered harder on the awning. She looked away, voice barely above a whisper. "You taught me something too. That sometimes even the people who hurt you did not mean to. They just did not know better." He smiled, a little sadly. "Then maybe we both learned something real." For a moment, they stood there in silence. Then he handed her a small envelope. "This is not money," he said quickly. "It is a ticket to the new exhibit in Singapore. If you ever want to see how far your art can go, I will make sure there is a space waiting for you." She opened it and saw not just the ticket but a sketch one she had given up on months ago. Somehow he had found it, framed it, and signed the back. Mistakes that matter. Her chest tightened again. "You kept this?" "I keep the things that remind me I am still human," he said. She nodded slowly. "I will think about it." He smiled faintly. "That is all I hoped for." Then he stepped back into the rain, disappearing into the blur of umbrellas and headlights. Over the next week, Emma threw herself into work again, but her focus drifted. Every time she saw a plane trace through the clouds, she wondered if he was on it already. When the gallery received a shipment of donated art supplies marked Parker Foundation Community Program, she knew he was gone. But something else arrived too, a letter addressed to her. No name, just a wax seal. Inside, written in clean handwriting, were 3 lines. "Do not wait for the world to notice your light. Build the room, hang the art, and let it glow. L." Emma smiled through a sting of tears. Weeks passed, and life went on. She organized small community workshops, taught kids to sketch with whatever they had, and painted again for herself. The city began to bloom, and with it came a quiet sense of peace. One evening, as she closed the gallery, Martha came running in. "Emma, turn on the news!" Close. On the television in the corner, a breaking headline flashed. "Private jet carrying Parker Innovations CEO makes emergency landing after engine failure. Passengers safe." Emma froze, hand over her mouth. Safe. That one word felt heavier than all the rest. She stood there in the empty gallery, rain beginning again outside, whispering to the glass, "Be careful out there." That night she could not sleep. She opened her sketchbook to a blank page and drew not the skyline, not the lights, but an open road under storm clouds. A small figure walking forward through the rain. Underneath, she wrote in slow, careful letters, "To the man who taught me that love is not power, it is presence." Outside her window, the rain softened into a steady rhythm, and for the first time in a long while, Emma did not feel alone. Spring turned into early summer. New York felt alive again, the kind of alive that hummed through open cafe doors and rooftop laughter. Emma's life had settled into quiet routine. She worked at the gallery, taught weekend art classes to kids, and finally started painting again for herself. Yet there were nights when the city lights outside her window blurred into the same blue-gray that reminded her of him. Liam's name began reappearing in the news. Headlines read, "Parker Innovations expands to Asia," and "New charity initiative funds education for underprivileged artists." Every time she saw one, Emma's heart tightened. He was doing exactly what he said he would, changing how he led, building differently. Still, the space between their worlds felt impossibly wide. Then one morning, as she unlocked the gallery door, she found a delivery truck parked outside. 2 men carried in large wooden crates marked "Property of Parker Innovations." "Claude, delivery for Miss Emma Brooks," one said. Her breath caught. "There must be a mistake." "No, ma'am," the man said, handing her a clipboard. "It is a donation, Mr. Parker's orders." Inside the crates were canvases, art supplies, and easels, all new, high quality, and far beyond what the small gallery could afford. On top of one box sat a sealed envelope. Emma opened it, her hands trembling slightly. For the classrooms you dreamed of. No strings attached. L. Quote, she stood there for a long time, staring at the note. Martha came up behind her, eyes wide. Emma, this is enough to run workshops for an entire year. Emma nodded, her throat tight. I know. That night, she stayed late at the gallery, unpacking everything by herself. With each new brush and canvas, the memory of his voice echoed in her mind. You taught me that connection is not weakness. She wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered. You really listened. Quote, 2 weeks later, the new art program opened its doors. Children filled the room with laughter, paint, and noise. Emma moved between them, guiding small hands and steadying shaky lines. For the first time, she felt something she had not felt in months: peace. But peace never lasts long in a city that runs on surprises. One afternoon, as she was cleaning brushes, Martha rushed in holding her phone. Emma, you need to see this. Yet, the screen showed a news clip. Parker Innovations faces internal dispute as board investigates executive misconduct. The image cut to Liam standing outside a courthouse, his expression composed but tired. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. Emma's heart dropped. The voiceover continued. Sources suggest the issue stems from within the company's leadership, possibly involving a family member. She turned down the volume, her hands shaking. Family member? Martha frowned. His cousin, I think. Something about forged signatures on a financial report. They said Mr. Parker is cooperating fully. That night, Emma could not stop thinking about it. Despite everything, she still cared. She remembered the look on his face the night he said goodbye, the exhaustion, the quiet fight in his eyes. And now, seeing him back under that same spotlight he once tried to escape, she knew this was not over for him. The next morning, she found another letter slipped under the gallery door. No courier, no signature, just familiar handwriting. Do not worry. Truth survives noise. Thank you for teaching me how to stand still when the world spins. L. Emma closed her eyes and let out a shaky breath. You stubborn man, she whispered. Over the following weeks, news of the case unfolded. Liam's cousin was accused of falsifying documents to divert funds from the charity division. Liam himself was cleared, but his reputation took another hit. Some investors withdrew, others stayed, trusting his leadership. And yet, through all the chaos, the Parker Foundation continued funding community art programs. The children's laughter in Emma's gallery did not stop. Every paint-stained apron and every tiny masterpiece felt like quiet proof that his vision was working real, lasting, human. One evening, while she was locking up, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. Heading back to New York next week. If you ever want to see what you built, the new Learning Center opens Friday. L. She stared at the text for a long time, then typed back 3 words. I already see it. When she pressed send, she smiled. Outside, the city glowed gold against a fading sky. For the first time, thinking of him did not hurt. It felt like remembering sunlight after rain, something distant but kind, something that had already done its work. And somewhere across the ocean, Liam read her message, smiled quietly, and whispered, then maybe we are finally both home. Summer settled heavy over Manhattan, the kind that made the air shimmer above the asphalt. The headlines about Parker Innovations had finally quieted down, but whispers still lingered in business circles. Liam had returned to New York to rebuild what his cousin's betrayal had nearly destroyed. He attended meetings, faced the board, and gave interviews that sounded calm and composed. But behind that polished image, the sleepless nights had returned. For Emma, life at the gallery kept her busy. The children's program continued to grow, and the art classes now had a waiting list. She often stayed late, sketching while the city hummed outside the windows. Yet, even with the laughter of students and the smell of paint, she could not shake a faint unease like a shadow she could not name. It was a Thursday when everything shifted again. She was preparing lesson plans when Martha hurried in, holding a tablet. Emma, look at this. On the screen, a news anchor spoke over a breaking headline. New evidence suggests sabotage in Parker Innovations case. The report showed blurry security footage of a man entering the company's parking garage the night before Liam's near-fatal car crash the previous year. Emma's stomach turned cold. She remembered that night too well, the headlines, the accident, and how it had all begun. The anchor continued. Authorities believe the man acted under the direction of Colin Mercer, former chief operating officer and cousin to CEO Liam Parker. Martha gasped. So it was his own family? Emma nodded slowly. He once said family and power never mixed well. That evening, she walked home through the glowing streets, her thoughts storming. The revelation hit her harder than she expected. The accident, the silence, the recovery, all of it had been built on betrayal. She remembered how fiercely Liam had tried to rebuild himself, and how carefully he had learned to be vulnerable again. At her apartment, she found a message waiting on her phone. I heard you saw the news. It is true. I would rather face the truth than live in comfort built on lies. L. She read it twice, then 3 times, before whispering to the empty room. You never stop fighting, do you? The next day, the gallery received an invitation embossed in gold. It read, Parker Foundation presents the Renewal Exhibit, a celebration of courage and creation. The opening was set for the following Friday at Cole Memorial Hall. Emma froze. That was the same hospital wing he had helped fund years ago, the place where, according to the article, he had almost died. For hours she debated whether to go, but in the end, curiosity and something deeper made the choice for her. The night of the event, she arrived quietly, blending in among the crowd. The hall gleamed with minimalist art pieces painted by survivors of illness, loss, and change. At the far end of the room, under a single spotlight, stood one painting that stopped her cold. It was her own piece, the one she had left unfinished months ago, a portrait of a city reflected through rain-streaked glass. But someone had completed it. Added to the corner were faint words, brushed in silver. Presence, not possession. Emma's eyes stung. Only one person knew that phrase. Behind her, a voice said softly, I thought it belonged here. She turned. Liam stood a few feet away, wearing a dark suit but no tie. His face looked tired but lighter somehow, as if he had finally stopped carrying the entire world on his shoulders. I did not know you were back, she said. I did not know if you would want to see me, he replied. But I could not open this without inviting you. You were part of what made it possible. She looked around at the art, the colors, the stories, the people whose lives had been touched by his foundation. You built all this? We built it, he said quietly. Your classes, your gallery, they inspired this program. Healing through creation. You showed me that helping people is not a transaction. It is a conversation. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, You once told me love is not power, it is presence. I finally understand what you meant. She smiled, eyes glistening. You finally learned to listen. He laughed softly, the sound fragile and real. I had a good teacher. Quote. The applause from the stage interrupted them as the announcer called Liam's name. He took a breath and turned to her. Will you stay? I will stay, she said. When he walked onto the stage, his speech was simple. This exhibit is not about wealth or status. It is about second chances, and the people who remind us that humanity is not weakness. The audience applauded. Emma watched from the back, her heart full. For the first time since the night she sat at the wrong table, she did not feel like a mistake in someone else's story. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass. Somewhere between forgiveness and beginning again, both of them had found something that looked a lot like peace. The night of the renewal exhibit ended with applause and camera flashes. But what lingered most was not the sound, it was the silence that followed. When the crowd had gone and the lights dimmed, Emma found herself standing alone before the painting that once belonged to her sketchbook. The silver words in the corner glowed faintly under the soft light. Presence, not possession. It felt like a quiet promise written into color. Liam walked over after finishing his interviews. He looked exhausted, but there was an ease in his expression she had never seen before. You stayed, he said. I said I would, she replied, smiling faintly. He stood beside her, looking at the painting. Do you ever think about how everything started? One wrong table, one wrong hello. Emma laughed softly. Maybe not wrong, maybe necessary. For a moment, they just stood there, watching the strokes of blue and gold reflected in the glass. Then his tone shifted. Emma, I need to tell you something. She turned to face him. What is it? He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Colin pleaded guilty yesterday. The court confirmed he orchestrated the brake tampering. He will serve time. Emma's eyes widened. So it is finally over? He nodded. Yes, but it is strange. When the news came in, I did not feel relief. I just felt tired. Winning, does not always feel like justice. She looked at him quietly. Justice is not about feeling good. It is about doing what is right, even when it costs you peace. He smiled, a small, grateful smile. You always know how to say what I cannot. Quote. A few minutes later, one of his security team approached. Mr. Parker, your car is ready. He nodded, then looked at her. Can I drive you home? Emma shook her head gently. No, I want to walk tonight. The air feels lighter than it has in a long time. He looked as if he wanted to argue but stopped himself. Then let me walk with you. They stepped outside together into the soft glow of streetlights. The city was quieter than usual, the kind of stillness that only came after rain. They walked slowly, side by side, past closed shops and glowing windows. After a while, he said, You once told me love is not possession. I think I finally understand that now. She looked at him, the corners of her lips lifting. Understanding is one thing. Living it is another. I am trying, he said. For the first time, I am learning to build something without control. And how does that feel? She asked. He took a breath, looking up at the night sky. Terrifying, but honest. Calm. They reached the corner near her apartment. She turned to face him. This is me, she said softly. He hesitated, eyes searching hers. Emma, before you go, there is something I have been working on. I have started a new initiative under the foundation. It is called the Brooks Project. It will fund scholarships for nurses and artists who combine healing and creativity. It was inspired by you. Her mouth fell open slightly. You named it after me? He nodded. It felt right. You taught me that healing is not about saving people. It is about helping them stand on their own feet again. For a long moment she could not speak. Then she whispered, That is beautiful, Liam. He smiled softly. It is not a repayment. It is a continuation. The wind brushed through the street, carrying faint traces of music from a nearby cafe. Emma looked at him, really looked this man who had once been untouchable now standing before her, humbled by life and changed by love. You have come a long way from the man I met at table 7, she said. And you, he said, have become the compass I did not know I needed. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to slow around them. Then she stepped back, her voice gentle but steady. Keep going, Liam. Keep building what matters. That is how you stay healed. He nodded, understanding the meaning behind her words. This was not a goodbye filled with pain, it was an acknowledgement of growth, of gratitude. As she walked away, he called after her softly, Emma. She turned. Thank you, he said, for everything. She smiled. You already did, Liam. You just did not know it. When she disappeared around the corner, Liam stood still under the city lights, the echo of her footsteps fading into the night. For the first time, he did not chase after what was leaving. He simply let it be, knowing that the truest kind of love did not need to be owned, it only needed to be honored. And somewhere above the hum of traffic and soft jazz from a passing cab, a voice inside him whispered what he now understood completely. She was his obsession, until one night she made him hers. Weeks passed after that quiet night on the street corner. The city moved forward as it always did, but for Liam Parker, the world felt different. Meetings no longer consumed him, headlines no longer defined him, and every decision he made now carried a single question in his mind. Would this help someone heal, or only help me stay powerful? The Brooks Project had become more than just a name. It was growing fast, creating scholarships for young nurses and artists, funding clinics that used art therapy, and turning old office spaces into community studios. For the first time in his life, Liam felt proud without feeling empty. Still, there were nights when the quiet stretched too long. He would walk through the halls of the Foundation's new center, hearing laughter, seeing students sketching under soft light, and wonder if Emma had any idea what her influence had built. One evening, as he was preparing to leave the office, Claire, his longtime assistant, knocked gently on the door. Mr. Parker, she said with a knowing smile. You might want to see this. She handed him a small flyer printed on recycled paper. It read, Local Gallery hosts art and healing exhibit, curated by Emma Brooks. Liam stared at it for a moment, then exhaled softly. She finally did it. Claire tilted her head. Should I clear your schedule for tomorrow evening? He hesitated, then nodded. Yes. No press, no entourage. The next night, the small neighborhood gallery buzzed with quiet energy. Paintings lined the walls, each one carrying a story of recovery, portraits of patients, cityscapes filled with color, abstract lines that seemed to pulse with life. At the center stood Emma, speaking to a group of visitors. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair loose, her voice calm and warm. Liam stayed near the back, unnoticed at first, watching her explain how art could turn pain into perspective. When people create, she said, they start to understand that brokenness does not mean the end of something. It means there is room for light to come through. He felt those words land deep in his chest. When she finally looked up and spotted him among the crowd, her voice faltered for just a second, then steadied. After the presentation ended, she approached him slowly. "You came," she said softly. He smiled. "I would not have missed it. You have built something beautiful." Crowd. She looked around at the walls. "It took a village, and a few lessons I did not expect to learn." "Such as?" he asked. She met his gaze. "That healing does not always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means peace." He nodded, the understanding clear in his eyes. "Then I am glad you found it." There was a pause before she said, "The Brooks Project has been helping so many people. I saw the new art center in Brooklyn. It is incredible." "It is yours as much as mine," he replied. "It began with you." Her smile was small but real. "Maybe, but you were the one who stayed to finish it." They walked through the gallery together, quietly admiring the work of others. At one corner, a child's drawing caught Liam's eye, a simple sketch of two figures standing beneath rain, sharing one umbrella. The title read, "Kindness is not weakness." Emma noticed where he was looking and said softly, "One of my students drew that after hearing our story." "Our story?" he asked, surprised. She laughed gently. "I did not tell them names. Just that once, a mistake led two people to learn how to love the right way." He looked back at the drawing, emotion flickering in his eyes. Then maybe mistakes are not such a bad thing after all. When the evening wound down, the guests began to leave, their conversations fading into the night. Liam turned to her one last time. "I will not take up your time, but I wanted to give you something." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a silver bracelet, engraved with the words, "Presence, not possession." Her breath caught. "Liam, it is not a gift to win you back," he said. "It is a reminder for both of us that love, when it is real, does not have to own anything to last." For a moment she said nothing. Then she fastened the bracelet around her wrist and smiled. "You finally learned the lesson. Thanks to the right teacher," he replied. As he left, Emma stood by the window, watching him disappear into the glowing streets. Her reflection in the glass shimmered beside the city lights, and for the first time, her heart felt steady, no longer pulled by guilt or longing, just calm. Outside, Liam looked up at the gallery's sign before walking away. A soft rain began to fall, and he tilted his face toward it, letting the drops mix with the faintest smile. Somewhere behind him, in that little gallery of color and light, Emma whispered the final truth of their story, almost to herself. He thought love was possession. I taught him it was presence. And for both of them, the world finally felt healed. A few months later, autumn returned to New York. The air had turned crisp, and the city was once again painted in the gold and red of falling leaves. The gallery's front window was filled with children's art from Emma's program, bright, imperfect, full of life. Inside, she stood on a small wooden ladder, hanging the final piece of their Seasons of Healing collection. It was a group project, made of dozens of handprints arranged in the shape of a heart. When she stepped down, Martha appeared with a warm smile and a folded newspaper. "You might want to see this," she said. On the front page was a photo of Liam Parker shaking hands with the mayor. The headline read, "Parker Foundation launches Global Healing Leadership Initiative." Emma traced the edges of the photo with her eyes. He looked different again, still powerful, but softer around the edges. "He really did it," she murmured. Martha nodded. "He has been building centers like yours in 5 cities. The first one opened in Chicago last week." Emma smiled, a quiet pride flickering behind her eyes. He always knew how to build. He just needed to learn what to build for. That evening, after the kids had gone and the lights were dimmed, Emma sat by the window with her sketchbook. The city glowed below, 1,000 moving stars. She began to draw without thinking, lines that turned into familiar eyes. A faint smile, the silhouette of a man walking through rain. When she finished, she turned the page and whispered, "Thank you for keeping your promise." Quote, across the city, in a new office overlooking the East River, Liam Parker stared out over the skyline. His assistant, Claire, placed a file on his desk. "Everything is confirmed for next week's launch in Boston. The board also approved your proposal for the scholarship in Grace Miller's name." He smiled faintly at the mention of the name from one of the nurses who had helped him during his recovery. "Good," he said. "Make sure the focus stays on them, not me." Claire tilted her head. "You are not staying for the event?" He shook his head. "It is not about me anymore. Besides, I promised someone once that leadership should be about presence, not power." She smiled knowingly. "You really took that to heart." He glanced at the photo frame on his desk, a picture of the gallery kids holding their paintings, Emma in the middle, laughing. He did not say anything, but the look in his eyes was enough. Later that night, he walked through the quiet halls of the new Healing Leadership Center. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. On one wall, a plaque read, "For those who teach us that healing begins with kindness. E.B." He ran his fingers over the letters, the corners of his mouth lifting. The next morning, Emma received a small parcel in the mail. Inside was a simple brown notebook with her initials embossed on the cover. When she opened it, the first page read, "Every story needs space to breathe. Keep telling yours. L." She smiled through a mix of surprise and tenderness. Inside the back cover, she found a pressed maple leaf, the same shade of red that filled the city outside. That weekend, her students gathered for their last art class of the season. She gave them blank canvases and said, "Paint something you are grateful for." One boy raised his hand. "What about you, Miss Emma? What are you grateful for?" She paused, looking around the room, her eyes soft. "For second chances," she said. "And for people who show up when it matters." After class, she walked to the park nearby. The trees were almost bare, but the air felt clean. On a park bench, she saw a small card resting on the seat. It read, "Art of Healing Workshop, sponsored by the Parker Foundation." Emma sat down, smiling. She knew he had been there not to be seen, not to impress, but simply to keep his word. The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the playground nearby. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "You did it, Liam." Somewhere in the distance, in a city full of stories, he might have smiled at the same moment, because healing, like love, never needed to be loud. It only needed to be true. And in that quiet, shared peace, both of them finally understood. The real ending was not goodbye. It was gratitude. Winter returned quietly that year, bringing with it a calm kind of beauty, the kind that wrapped the city in soft gray light and made the streets smell like snow. Emma stood inside the gallery, now expanded and newly painted, watching her students hang ornaments shaped like tiny paintbrushes on a Christmas tree made of wire and recycled frames. The laughter of the children filled the space with warmth, and for a moment, she forgot how long it had been since she had last seen him. Almost a year had passed since their last conversation. In that time, the Brooks Project had grown beyond anything she had imagined. The foundation funded art programs in hospitals, schools, and shelters across the country. People often asked her if she had met the man behind it again. She always smiled and said, "No, but his work speaks louder than words." Great. That afternoon, Martha called from the office, waving a letter. "Emma, this just came in. It is from the Parker Foundation." Emma wiped her hands on a towel and opened it carefully. Inside was an official invitation written in elegant script. "The Parker Foundation and the Brooks Project invite you to the Grand Gala for Healing Leadership, held at Cole Memorial Hall. Dress code, black tie. Theme, the art of presence." Her heart skipped a beat. Cole Memorial Hall, where everything had once fallen apart, and where everything had quietly begun again. She stood there, frozen between memory and anticipation. Martha smiled gently. "You should go, Emma. It sounds like the right time." A week later, the night of the gala arrived. Snow fell in thin spirals through the city, glimmering under streetlights. Emma stepped out of a cab in a simple emerald dress, the same color as the scarf she had worn that first winter when she met him. Inside, the hall gleamed with gold light and quiet music. Guests filled the room, their laughter echoing through marble and glass. When she entered, heads turned not because of glamour, but because she carried herself differently now. Calm, steady, grounded. She made her way toward the main stage, where a large banner hung. "The Art of Presence, Honoring Those Who Heal." The lights dimmed, and a familiar voice filled the room. "Tonight is not about success. It is about gratitude." Quote. Emma's breath caught as she saw him step onto the stage. Liam looked the same yet entirely different, his presence lighter, his expression open. The audience applauded as he continued. A few years ago, I believed that leadership meant control. Then I met someone who taught me that real leadership begins with listening. She taught me that love and healing come from the same place, presence. A spotlight swept gently toward the crowd and stopped on her. Gasps rippled through the audience. Emma froze as Liam smiled. She once sat at the wrong table and changed my life. Tonight I want to thank her the only way I know how, with truth. The room fell silent. He turned toward a covered painting beside him and slowly pulled the cloth away. It revealed a large canvas titled, "The Art of Emma Brooks." It showed a woman standing under city lights, holding an open sketchbook, her reflection merging with the skyline behind her. Liam spoke softly, his voice steady. "This piece represents everything she taught me, that kindness is not weakness, that humanity is strength, and that healing begins when we choose to see each other as equals." Applause erupted, but Emma hardly heard it. Her chest felt full, her eyes blurred with tears. As the crowd rose to their feet, Liam looked directly at her and said, "Emma, would you join me on stage?" She hesitated only a moment before walking forward. When she reached him, he whispered so only she could hear, "I told you once that you made me live. You did more than that. You taught me how to be alive." She looked at him through tears, her voice trembling but sure. "And you taught me that some mistakes are worth keeping." He smiled, eyes shining. "Then maybe this is one of them." They stood together beneath the golden lights, surrounded by people who had been touched by their shared work. The applause faded into soft music, and for a moment, everything felt still. Two lives that had collided by accident now standing side by choice. When the night ended, Liam walked her outside. Snow drifted down slowly, settling on her hair. "You know," he said quietly, "this time I did not plan anything grand. I just wanted you to see that what we built mattered." She smiled, brushing snow from his coat. "It mattered because you stopped trying to own it. You let it live." Quote. They stood there, the city lights reflecting in the snow, not as billionaire and waitress, not as savior and saved, but as two people who had finally learned the same language. Grace. And as the snow kept falling, Emma whispered what she had always believed deep down. Love was never about fixing someone. It was about standing beside them until they healed. "Go on." He took her hand, not to hold it forever, but to honor the moment, and together they walked into the quiet night, both finally at peace, both whole. Snow still covered the sidewalks the next morning, soft and untouched, as if the city itself wanted to stay quiet a little longer. Emma woke early, the echoes of last night still alive in her chest. The applause, the lights, the way Liam had looked at her, not with possession or apology, but with peace. For the first time, she felt like their story had found its ending, not in words, but in understanding. At the gallery, sunlight filtered through the frosted windows. The children's art still hung across the walls from the holiday event. She unlocked the door, set her coffee down, and found a small white envelope waiting on the counter. Her name was written in careful handwriting she recognized immediately. She opened it and smiled as she read, "Emma, the Foundation's new center opens next week, and I want you to see it before anyone else does. No cameras, no press, just you. L." A week later, she arrived at the new Parker Brooks Healing Center, tucked near the edge of the Hudson River. The glass building stood like a mirror of the sky, open and calm. Inside, the halls smelled faintly of paint and cedarwood. Artwork from her students lined one corridor, colorful, hopeful, and signed in small, uneven handwriting. Liam was waiting by the entrance, dressed simply, no tie, his coat open to the winter air. He smiled when he saw her. "You came." "I said I would," she replied, the same words she had said that night at the exhibit. He walked her through the center, showing her classrooms filled with art supplies, recovery rooms lit by soft daylight, and a large garden enclosed by glass. "Every piece of this," he said, "was inspired by what you told me. Healing should not feel sterile. It should feel alive." Emma turned slowly, taking it all in. "It is beautiful, Liam. It feels human. That was the goal," he said softly. "To build something that gives without demanding anything in return." When they reached the garden, snow fell gently outside the glass roof. A sculpture stood in the center, a pair of intertwined hands carved from marble, one smaller, one larger, both reaching upward. At the base was a plaque that read, "Kindness is not weakness, in honor of Emma Brooks." Emma's breath caught. She looked at him in disbelief. "You did not have to do that." I did, he said, because I spent half my life building towers that touched the sky, but none of them ever touched people. You changed that. You reminded me that leadership, love, and healing are all the same thing when they start from truth. Her eyes glistened, not with sadness, but with quiet pride. And you reminded me that not all power corrupts. Some power can heal when it chooses to listen. They stood there for a long moment, surrounded by the soft hum of the city beyond the glass. Then Liam reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a hospital wristband, old but carefully preserved. He held it out. Do you remember this? She laughed softly through her tears. I cannot believe you kept that. I kept it because it was the first time someone saw me as human, he said. I thought maybe now it could mean something else. He placed it gently on her wrist. The tag had been re-engraved. It now read, Property of Grace, not possession. Presence. Emma smiled. You still have a habit of turning everything into a message. He laughed quietly. Old habits. But maybe this time, they are the right ones. They walked back toward the entrance together. Outside, the snow had slowed, and the city lights shimmered against the river. He stopped and looked at her. Emma, I do not know where life will take either of us next, but I want you to know something. I will always stand beside what we built. I will never stop believing in what you taught me. She looked up at him, her eyes steady. Then we are even. Because I learned something from you too, that love, when it is real, does not rescue or control. It restores. He smiled, the kind of smile that carried both gratitude and release. You were never just the woman who healed me, Emma. You were the reason I learned how to heal myself. As they stepped outside, the wind carried the faint sounds of the river and the city blending together, ordinary, alive, infinite. They walked side by side down the snowy path, neither leading nor following, their steps perfectly in rhythm. And in that quiet moment, the story that began with a mistake found its perfect closure. Voiceover. He thought love was possession. She taught him it was presence. And in the end, healing was never about being saved. It was about choosing to live together, as equals. Quote, the camera of memory lingered on their footprints fading into the snow, two trails merging into one, before the light took them both.